Okay, so Plato's Apology. The first thing to understand about this is that apology does not mean what we think it does today. So the title is the Apology. It actually comes from the Greek word apologia, which actually means defense. So it means like the defense that you are given at a trial. And when you read the Apology, you'll realize, hey, Socrates actually isn't apologizing for anything. So this is the story of the trial of Socrates. And it's part of a series of dialogues that deals with the events that lead up to the trial and the ultimate conviction of Socrates and his eventual death in prison. So this is sort of like the second piece of it. Okay, so we can divide the Apology into basically three parts. Socrates gives a speech in his own defense, and that is the numbers that we refer to in a dialogue with Plato's are called Stephanus numbers. So anytime you see these numbers, they're the little numbers on the side of the page. So from about Stephanus 17a to 35d is where Socrates is giving his speech in his defense. And then there's a really short counter assessment from 35e to 38d, and then Socrates gives sort of his final words to the jury through the end. So the questions we're looking at here are what are the charges, and are they legitimate? Is this like a fair trial? And how does Socrates respond in his defense? Okay, so the person who's bringing the charges formally that we see in the Apology is named Miletus, and he's a young prosecutor. We actually don't know a lot about him other than his portrayal within the Apology. We're pretty sure that he would have given a speech too, like a prosecutorial speech, but this isn't actually included in Plato's account, and we don't have a copy of it today, so we don't know what he would have said. He's one of like three people though who are sort of leading the charges against Socrates. So you can see sort of like right near the beginning, Socrates is guilty of wrongdoing in that he busies himself studying things in the sky and below the earth. He makes the worst into the stronger argument, and he teaches the same things to others. You've seen this yourself in the comedy of Aristophanes as a Socrates swinging about there, saying he was walking on air and talking a lot of nonsense about things, which I know nothing at all. Socrates is referring to this play that Aristophanes wrote called The Clouds, where Socrates himself is portrayed as like this kind of idiot who is just going around saying stupid stuff. Okay, so what do the charges mean? Like when we look at them, studying things in the sky and below the earth is one version of that charge, but the other version is not believing in the gods of the city, but believing in other gods. If you look at 24b, so that is it's construed as a charge of atheism that Socrates, because he doesn't believe in the gods of the city, that he's some kind of atheist. The second charge is that he makes the worst argument the stronger. That is the charge of sophistry, right? So we looked at the sophists earlier, and they're the rhetoricians, the people who believe in relativism, that there's no right or wrong, and so they're always trying to convince people of something. And so that's that charge. And then finally, he's accused of corrupting the youth, right? When they say teaching the others the same, basically that means like he's corrupting the youth with philosophy, which I think is kind of funny. So remember, the sophists, they were these teachers of rhetoric, and they charged fees. You paid them some money, especially if you were a young statesman or a member of the nobility, and it was like you paid a debate coach to teach you how to speak. And to teach you how to be a virtuous and excellent person. Now, if you look up sophistry or sophistry in the dictionary today, the modern definition of it is the use of reasoning or arguments that sound correct but are actually false. So a lot of the Greek people are really critical of the practices of the sophists, and so lumping Socrates in with these people is an insult, right? And okay, so in the Apology, you basically have two sections. One where he's addressing his old accusers, and then second when he's addressing his new accusers. And this is when he's questioning Miletus. He's directing the speech at the jury. And one of the first things he says is, I'm not a sophist because I don't charge a fee for my service. And one of the things that's really frustrating when you read this is like how seriously Socrates takes the trial, which is not very seriously at all. So he can come off as seeming really arrogant throughout the trial. So there's that. And then there's Socrates explaining his life mission. And this is where it gets a little weird. But he tells us about a friend of his, and his friend went to the oracle at Delphi, right? Which is like a truth teller, like someone who's connected to the gods who can see the future and answer questions. And so his friend went to the oracle and asked the question, if there was any man who was wiser than Socrates, and the oracle said no, there's no one wiser. And Socrates hears this and he's like, what is that? What are the gods talking about? I'm not wise. And so he's concerned with this statement, because the oracle wouldn't lie, but Socrates himself doesn't think he's wise at all. So, what we eventually arrive at is the conclusion of Socrates is that he is the wisest because he is the one who knows that he actually doesn't know anything. So everyone else actually thinks that they're wise because they believe that they have knowledge of many things. But Socrates, in professing his ignorance, is the one who actually knows the most because he knows he doesn't know everything. He doesn't believe it at first, though, so he tries to prove the oracle wrong, and he goes to ask a bunch of people a bunch of questions to see if he can find someone wiser than him. And so he goes to the politicians, and then he goes to the poets, and he goes to the craftsmen, and he says all of these people think they're wise, but no one is actually as wise as Socrates because they all think that they know stuff, but they don't. So Socrates actually sees himself as on a mission from the gods. To increase wisdom among people by showing them that they don't know what they think they know. And basically this is what he's got in trouble for. Talking to people and asking them questions and bringing them around to the understanding that they don't know as much as they think that they do. So he says, in my investigation in the service of the god, I found that those who had the highest reputation were nearly the most efficient, while those who were thought to be inferior were more knowledgeable. And that's the theme that you see a lot through Plato's dialogues. So, so Socrates continues to address the other two charges that Meletus has brought against him. One, that he's corrupted the youth, and two, that he is an atheist. So he responds first to the corrupting the youth charge by giving like this ad hominem attack to Meletus and says that he's the one who corrupts people because he deals frivolously with serious matters. And then he kind of starts this question and answer period with Meletus. And he gives this example about, it can't be the case that Socrates is solely to be blamed for the corruption of the youth. So if you take an example of a horse who is corrupted by a bad owner, it's not that one person has corrupted them, it's that they've been corrupted by a number of people, and Socrates tries to make the same argument. I'm not the one who corrupted everyone. It doesn't, you need a bunch of people to be corrupting influences on kids. And then Socrates says, well, look, if I corrupted the youth at all, I didn't do it on purpose. And if we assume that it's not deliberate, and then, so Socrates says, well, then there are two possibilities. Either I don't corrupt the youth at all, or if I do, I don't do it on purpose. And in either case, you're lying. So if he doesn't corrupt the youth, then he's innocent. But if he corrupts the youth unwillingly, he should be brought to trial because the proper way to respond to someone who's doing something unwillingly is to instruct the person and not to harm them. So at the end of the trial, Socrates is found guilty. And it's really kind of surprising, but kind of not, because the people of Athens are just kind of done with him. So, in the sentencing phase, he's asked what he thinks his punishment should be, and he responds that he should be given free meals at the Prytaneum, which is the town hall, at the expense of the city, which is a joke. But Socrates legitimately believes he's doing a service to the people of Athens, and he thinks the whole trial is a farce. So of course he's going to propose something ludicrous for his punishment. His actual punishment is the death penalty, and so the apology concludes with Socrates arguing that the just man shouldn't fear death. And we'll talk more about death when we look at the Crito. But some questions you should ask yourself when you're reading this are whether Socrates was actually trying to get himself acquitted at all, and if he wasn't, what was the purpose of the speech? Is Socrates an example of a man who lived and died by his own philosophy, or is he kind of like a self-appointed martyr? That's a really good question, I think. His life mission and how did he acquire it? We answered that question. What the key to the good life is? The good life for Socrates is living as a philosopher, engaging in philosophy, and trying to answer the really tough questions. So questioning everything is the key to the good life. I asked you this question in the blog, so that's all I think I have to say about the Apology. And the next time we talk about Plato, we'll be talking about death more specifically through the Crito and the end of the Phaedo.